It's February 14th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with reciprocal tariffs by U.S. President Donald Trump. As widely expected, Trump has officially ordered his officials to increase tariffs to match the tax rates that other countries charge on imports. The tariffs, the White House says, will be customized to specific countries. The Constitutional Court decided to hold one more hearing next Tuesday for President Yoon's impeachment trial over his martial law declaration. If additional witnesses are called in, more than one hearing could be necessary, also pushing back the court's verdict on Yoon's impeachment to mid-March. Team Korea bagged 3 gold medals at the Asian Winter Games in Harbin on Thursday. Included are 2 golds in both men's and women's figure skating singles, a first for Korea in the Winter Games. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed a plan to roll out increased import duties for every trading partner that taxes U.S. imports. The tariffs could be effective as early as April. Our Shin Ha-young reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump reinforced his push to impose reciprocal tariffs on global trade partners to match the tax rates that other countries impose on imports, fueling fears of a trade war. On Thursday, Trump signed a presidential memorandum ordering a comprehensive plan for reciprocal tariffs, aiming to deliver a level playing field for American workers.
On trade, I have decided for purposes of fairness that I will charge a reciprocal tariff, meaning whatever countries charge the United States of America, we will charge them, no more, no less.
The latest announcement comes as part of Trump's aggressive push for more balanced trade following recent 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. Trump's tariffs would also target countries with non-tariff trade barriers such as subsidies, burdensome regulations, and value-added taxes. Another element to be considered is exchange rate policies in countries. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said his team would be ready to hand a plan to the president by April 1st. Although South Korea has signed a free trade agreement with the U.S. and has eliminated most tariffs, Trump's plan to consider non-tariff barriers could lead to him imposing reciprocal tariffs on South Korea. South Korea posted a record trade surplus with the U.S. last year. Trump has also signaled potential tariffs on automobiles, with the White House also seeking to renegotiate the U.S. Chips and Science Act, which could affect South Korea's top 2 exports to the U.S., raising concerns about further economic impact. Despite fears of a global economic slowdown, Trump is expected to continue his hardline tariff policy. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The Constitutional Court has decided to hold an extra hearing next week for President Yoon's impeachment trial to summarize the arguments. Now, if the hearings do come to an end next week, the ruling could come as early as March. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
The battle of narratives continued at President Yoon's impeachment trial as the 8th and initially last session was extended with another hearing scheduled for next Tuesday. Cho Sung-yeon, the head of the Capital Defense Command's first security group, said he had been ordered by his commander Lee Jin-woo to pull out legislators from the parliamentary building. Lee Jin-woo, who was questioned at the court last week, had refused to answer whether he'd been given such an order by Yoon due to his ongoing criminal trial, while the president has denied issuing such instructions. Defense Minister Kim Yong-an has claimed the order was to pull out agents or yoon, not legislators or 의원, while Special Warfare Commander Kwak Jong-gun said the president said persons or inwon. More conflicting statements emerged during the session. National Intelligence Service Chief Cho Tae-yong cast doubt over the claims made by his deputy last week that the president ordered the arrest of politicians on the night of December 3rd. Deputy Director Hong Jang-won has said he had heard 14 to 16 public figures named as targets for arrest by Counterintelligence Commander Yeo In-young, which he wrote down on a notepad outside Director Cho's residence. He claimed his secretary helped decipher it later, thus there were 2 notes in total. However, Cho says based on CCTV footage, Hong was not outside, but in his office at the time he said he wrote the memo. The director also said there appeared to be 4 versions of the note, seeming to suggest there's been some fabrication on Hong's part. Cho questioned Hong's political neutrality, adding he had heard last year in a parliamentary committee meeting that Hong had made 7 separate requests regarding personnel appointments to a former opposition party lawmaker who previously worked at the NIS under the last administration. On Thursday, former Seoul Metropolitan Police Commissioner Kim Bong-sik also testified. Kim said that he had deployed police to the National Assembly to ensure public safety and denied he'd been given orders to make arrests. As witness statements continue to clash, the president's side on Thursday reapplied for Prime Minister Han Duck-soo to be called as a witness, whom the court rejected on Tuesday, and asked to resummon Hong Jang-won. They also asked for National Police Agency Commissioner General Cho Ji-ho to be made to stand as a witness, as he failed to show up twice due to health reasons. Justices will review the new witness applications on Friday. So far, the court has accepted a total of 15 witnesses in the impeachment trial, 7 requested by the National Assembly and 8 by President Yoon's side. This compares to the 36 approved during former President Park Geun-hye's impeachment trial.
For now, the court has scheduled a 9th hearing for next Tuesday at 2 p.m, where each legal team will have 2 hours to summarise their arguments. If the hearings conclude next week, observers say the ruling could be made in early March. Park Geun-hye's impeachment was upheld in 11 days, while former President Roh Moo-hyun's impeachment was dismissed in 14 days. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
So it'll take one more hearing for the court to deliver the final verdict and really decide the fate of the troubled leader. Now, why one more? We are joined by legal expert Kim Ji-soo. Welcome back, Ji-soo.
Thank you for having me again.
Thanks for joining us. Ji-soo, why do you think the court decided to have an extra hearing? I mean, any reason behind the court's decision? Why one or why not 2?
The court scheduled only 1 extra hearing instead of 2 because it likely believed that 1 more session is just enough to finalize this whole process without unnecessary delays. And basically, the court is aiming to wrap things up efficiently while making sure they've got everything they need to make a fair ruling. And that's why the court set up 8 sessions for the hearings in the first place, because they thought that would be enough to cover everything that it was important. However, they decided to add an extra hearing to clarify arguments, quoting, they will settle out some important documents and evidence that haven't been fully looked over into yet in the 9th, so giving them one last chance to tidy up their arguments before the final decisions. So the 9th hearing looks like as if it's the last straw. President Yoon's call for witness will be decided today, which shows a strong will for court to not extend any more hearings than 9th.
So it's going to be another crucial day next Tuesday. Now, what will the last hearing supposedly focus on then?
The court will focus to make sure all the evidence has been properly looked over and that both sides have everything laid out clearly. And it's like a final review that no details are missed before making a big decision. And as for the key witnesses, it is unlikely that many of President Yoon's requested witnesses will be approved. The court is likely to stick with the evidence and testimonies that they already have. There was a talk about bringing in more witnesses from President Yoon's side, like Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, but that probably won't happen either since the court made a firm rejection of a called witness. However, we might see some people come back for a bit more questioning if the court thinks it's necessary, such as former NIS Deputy Director Hong Jang-won and a police chief officer Cho Ji-ho, as their testimony seems to be relevant in the court. So the decisions will be also made by this day of today.
Well, President Yoon's side, again, requests to bring in Prime Minister Han Duck-soo as a witness yet again. Ji-soo, do you think the court will accept the request this time?
Well, the court has already turned down the request to have Prime Minister Han Duck-soo testify once, and it looks like they will probably do it again. Basically, they don't see his testimony as directly relevant to the main issues of President Yoon's impeachment, like whether there was a violation of the Constitution or an abuse of power. However, President Yoon's team seems to pushing it for anyway because it might be a strategic turnout, or it may sway public opinion, or it might set up a basis for challenging the court's decision later on.
Well, in the meantime, Yoon's side also has appointed 3 additional lawyers. That increases the total number of representatives to 22, at least 22. What does it mean to have more legal experts, especially when the trial is coming to an end?
Well, we need to first look into the lawyer's background. President Yoon's team has brought in someone like attorney Jeon Byung-kwan, who's got first-hand experience with impeachment trials where he have represented former President Park Geun-hye. So by adding lawyers who are familiar with the constitutional court's process, the team is clearly looking to strengthen their strategic approach. However, when it comes to is bigger always better, it's like when sports team adds more star players. It's great on paper, but what really matters is how well they play together. And more lawyers mean more brains to strategize, but the challenge is making sure they all sync up and work effectively as a team.
So for now, there is just one extra hearing scheduled for next Tuesday. So even with one more hearing on the 18th and more witnesses you just mentioned, the impeachment trial is expected to wrap up in March, would you say?
Yes, I would say with one more hearing on the 18th, the direction of today's decision on new witness is quite crucial. And if no additional witnesses are added, we're definitely on track to conclude the trial will be wrapped up in March. And what will happen next if new witnesses like Prime Minister Han Duck-soo are approved, the timeline could extend, potentially delaying the conclusion. Otherwise, the 8th could be our final session. And as for the consequences of the court's ruling, if the court rules that President Yoon is guilty, this could lead to an election in May. And if the court rules in favor, he would return to the office immediately.
Alrighty, Jisoo, thank you so much for connecting with us. As always, you have a wonderful day.
You too.
Job growth in South Korea perked back up in the first month of the year, but some sectors saw big declines. Data from Statistics Korea on Friday showed that there were 27.8 million people in employment in January. That's a rise of some 135,000 from the same month the year before. This is due to jobs being added in healthcare and welfare, as well as professional, scientific, and technical services. However, jobs in construction saw the biggest decline since the data collection began due to a slump in the construction sector, alongside a drop in manufacturing jobs despite booming semiconductor exports. North Korea started to destroy a reunion center for separated families near the inter-Korean border amid icy ties with the South. Seoul urged the regime to immediately stop its actions. Our Pansy reports.
The Inter-Korean Family Reunion Center, located at Kumgangsan Mountain, has been a symbol of peace, as it has been used to host tearful reunions of families separated for decades by the Korean War. Since 2009, it has hosted 5 meetings between families from the two Koreas, and the last family reunion was held there in August 2018.
고마웠어요. 여튼 살아줘서 고마웠어요. 꼭 다시 만나요.
But on Thursday, the South Korean government said the North has begun dismantling the facility in the latest sign of strained inter-Korean ties, after the regime described the South as its principal enemy. The Unification Ministry spokesperson urged the North to immediately halt its actions, adding that the government plans to consider legal measures over the action and a joint response with the international community.
The demolition of the facility is an anti-humanitarian act that tramples on the wishes of separated families and a violation of South Korea's assets.
Upon an agreement between the two Koreas, the 12-story reunion center was built in July 2008 at a cost of over $35 million. The building was the last remaining South Korean-owned facility in the Kumgangsan Mountain tourist region, as the North has been demolishing facilities there over the past few years. After the Hanoi summit between the United States and North Korea ended in failure in February 2019, Kim Jong-un visited the resort area later that year in October and ordered the removal of South Korean facilities there, saying they were shabby and that they looked like makeshift tents in a disaster-stricken area. Since 2022, the regime has destroyed other facilities, including a hotel, a fire station, and a golf clubhouse, leaving only the reunion center, which it has also started to tear down. Arirang News.
The commander of the U.S. Space Operations Command said that North Korea's missile technology has become the biggest threat to the Korean peninsula, but warned Pyongyang against any attempt to challenge the ROK-U.S. alliance. Speaking to Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency on Thursday, Lieutenant General David Miller expressed concerns over the North's continued development and launch of ballistic missiles. He stressed that it's difficult to predict what the North will do next, adding that the U.S. has been focused on detecting and tracking North Korean missiles. However, Miller says the South Korea-U.S. alliance is stronger than ever in the face of Pyongyang's threats, and emphasized that it would be a mistake to challenge the strength of the alliance. Russia has begun preparing a delegation for talks with the U.S. to stop the war in Ukraine. According to a Kremlin spokesperson on Thursday, Ukraine would definitely take part in the negotiations, but noted there will be also a separate U.S. Russia track. However, details regarding participants or the size of the delegation were not provided. This comes a day after U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed in a phone call to begin talks on ending the war. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine would not accept any peace deal made between the U.S. and Russia without its involvement. He also stressed that Europe should be a part of the negotiations. South Korean figure skaters proved to be #1 at the Winter Asian Games in Harbin on Thursday, securing golds in both the men's and women's figure skating singles event. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
South Korea added 3 more gold medals to their tally on Thursday and made history in the process, winning gold medals in both the women's and men's figure skating singles event, which was a first for the country. Female figure skater Kim Chae-yeon and male figure skater Cha Jun-hwan both ranked second after the short program earlier in the week. However, both skaters came back on Thursday with flawless free skates. Cha scored 187.60 points in the men's singles free skating program, finishing with a final tally of 281.69 points for the top podium finish. Kim scored 147.56 points in the free skate to finish with 219.44 points overall, a personal best, beating 3-time world champion Kaori Sakamoto of Japan for the gold medal. Over in the men's snowboard halfpipe event, Mother Nature assisted South Korean snowboarder Kim Gun-hee on Thursday. The final was canceled due to blustery conditions, and officials awarded Kim the gold medal after scoring the best qualifying score of 78 points. The gold medal finish gave South Korea its 15th top podium finish at the Winter Asian Games and clinched second place in the medal rankings. With the Winter Asian Games in Harbin set to end on Friday, South Korea will look to add a couple more gold medals to surpass their all-time best gold tally. South Korea will compete for gold medals in both men's and women's curling. The men's team will face off against the Philippines, while the women's team will play China. Both the men's and women's team had previously defeated their opponents during the earlier round-robin play. With 1 day of competition left, South Korea is second behind China in the medal rankings, with 15 gold medals, 14 silver, and 13 bronze, for a total of 42 medals. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a look at the stories from around the world with our Choi Ji-hee. Good morning, Ji-hee.
Good morning, Dami.
So, Ji-hee, let's start in the UK, where Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is visiting, and he's already held some talks with high-ranking officials there, right?
That's right. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi made his first official visit to the UK in almost a decade and held bilateral talks with top officials. On Thursday, UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy met with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, marking the revival of the UK-China strategic dialogue after a 7-year halt. The talks encompassed bilateral economic cooperation, international security, and areas of contention. Lammy emphasized the importance of addressing issues where the UK and China do not always see eye to eye, stressing the UK's concerns in some areas. Key points included China's support for Russia amid the ongoing Ukraine conflict, human rights issues in Hong Kong, and the situation in Xinjiang. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer also attended the meeting of 2 foreign ministers, highlighting the UK's dedication to establishing a consistent and respectful bilateral relationship. In the German city of Munich, a driver drove a car into a crowd, leaving at least 30 people injured. On Thursday local time, a white Mini Cooper plowed into a crowd at a trade union rally near Munich Central train station. The driver, a 24-year-old Afghan asylum-seeker, was arrested. The incident injured 30 people, including children, and several victims sustained serious injuries. Authorities believe the act was deliberate, though the exact motive is still being investigated. The suspect had a history of minor offenses, and his asylum application had been rejected in 2020. Yet deportation was deferred due to safety concerns in Afghanistan. Over in Panama, President Jose Raul Mulino said Thursday that the country received its first U.S. deportation flight the previous day, carrying 119 migrants from various nationalities, including China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. The initiative follows an agreement with the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, designating Panama as a transit point for deported individuals. The migrants will be temporarily housed in a shelter in Panama's Darien region before being repatriated to their home countries. 2 more flights are planned, totaling approximately 360 deportees. Sports industry news site Sportico released its list of the highest-paid athletes in 2024 on Thursday, with Portuguese football player Cristiano Ronaldo on top for the second consecutive year with $260 million earned. Stephen Curry, Tyson Fury, Lionel Messi, and LeBron James completed the top 5. The top 100 athletes collectively earned $6.2 billion, marking a 14% increase from the previous year. Notably, no female athletes made the top 100 list, with the highest-earning woman being tennis star Coco Gauff, with total earnings of $30.4 million.
Welcome news for those waiting for some warmer weather. Temperatures will rise to around 10 degrees Celsius this afternoon in Seoul, making it feel much more like early spring. So let's jump right into today's highs. Gwangju also gets up to 10 degrees. Daegu, Busan will see a high of 12 degrees Celsius. It will be sunny to partly sunny in most parts, but the East Coast remains under a dry weather advisory. We are expecting decent air quality during the day, but the capital and Chungcheongdo could see dusty air at night. Both Saturday and Sunday will bring mild and comfortable conditions. Daytime highs will stay above norms. Meanwhile, Jeju and the South Coast could see some rain on Saturday. Don't put away those winter coats just yet. A cold front is set to arrive next week, bringing another round of freezing temperatures. Morning lows could dip below -5 degrees here in Seoul, reminding winter is not quite done with us yet.
That wraps up our morning edition of Arirang News. We will be back next Monday at the same time, 10 a.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
저희가 매일매일 자동차를 타고 일상생활에서도 쉽게 사용을 하는데, 그런 자동차에서 타이어는 계속해서 버려지고 있거든요. 전 세계적으로 10억 개 이상 버려지고 있는데 특히 소각 처리될 경우에는 대기오염 물질들이 여러 가지가 나오게 되고 매립됐을 때는 지하수나 토양오염 물질들이 많이 방출되게 됩니다. 저희는 그런 타이어들을 어떻게 잘 처리할지 좀 고민을 했었습니다. 타이어가 가지고 있는 접지력이나 내마모성이 좀 우수하다고 생각을 했고요. 저희는 타이어 하나로 신발을 3.5켤레 정도를 만들 수가 있어요. 그렇게 됐을 때 저희의 신발 한 켤레는 타이어에서 발생되는 탄소를 8.9kg 정도 저감할 수 있는 그런 효과가 있습니다. 이 일을 시작하기 전에는 타이어가 그렇게 많이 버려지는지도 몰랐고, 그리고 버려진 타이어들이 환경 파괴적으로 처분되는 것도 사실은 잘은 몰랐어요. 점점 더 적체가 되고 있거든요, 타이어들이. 시간이 지나면 지날수록 더 큰 문제가 될 것 같다는 생각에 지금 일을 하고 있습니다. 타이어마다 모양이나 패턴이 굉장히 많이 다양한데 내가 가지고 있는 신발이 다른 신발들과 모양이 다를 수 있다는 점, 그런 점도 재미 요소로 좀 다가가고 있습니다. 저희도 그런 계기를 보다 많은 분들께 하나 더 제공해 주고자 매일매일 신는 신발을 만들겠다고 한 것도 있어요. 조금 더 주변을 살펴보면은 나 스스로도 조금 더 환경 보호에 참여할 수 있는 일이나 물건들이 더 있지 않을까, 그렇게 찾아보시면 어떨까 싶습니다. 나는 다시 달릴 수 있게 만드는 그리너입니다.
Step into a world where culture speaks beyond words, bridging hearts and minds. Hello, this is your DJ Sujung for Culture Crunch. Crunch on a new flavor of K-culture with me every day. We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Friday, February 14th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yoo-jin, and thank you for tuning in to News Generation. Joining us on this Friday is Lee Won-bin.
Good morning.
Good morning, and Brooke Prince.
Hello, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. That both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So we're going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Friday means it's time to explore topics that resonate with young people around the world. And today, as Brooke mentioned, love is in the air as we come on air as it's Valentine's Day. Now, this is a day when lovebirds go all out, planning romantic dates, sharing heartfelt gifts, and making unforgettable memories. So we're going to start with a very simple but important question, which is, what's your idea of a perfect date?
Perfect date. What a perfect question to start the topic. Well, first of all, I have to mention that I'm a freelancer. So my peak working hours are when the regular office workers are not working. So like the 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. So this means if my partner has a regular 9 to 6 job, which is statistically very likely, I won't have much time to spend time with my girlfriend. Therefore, if I do go on a date, quality time and communication is the key for me. It's all about the conversations. You know, there's a saying that says communication is key, and I really do believe this up to a point. Of course, it depends on what stage you are in your relationship, but talking to each other always helps, Unless the theme of the date is to visit a landmark or somewhere crowded, I prefer to go somewhere private or at least somewhere where I can have a comfortable discussion for a couple of hours. And this is a tip for the viewers. Based on my experiences, going to somewhere where desserts and sweets are very accessible is a great choice. Cake, ice cream, and bingsu, which is Korean snowflake, they tend to act as a good fire extinguisher if the conversation starts to catch fire.
All right, so your definition of a perfect date is conversation along with some good dessert.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, what about you, Brooke?
Aside from the dessert, I think we have quite different views of our perfect date.
That's nice.
Won-bin's focused a lot on the conversation, but for me, perhaps because I'm an introvert, I like a date where you can focus on the activity so that there's not so much pressure on the conversation aspect. So for me, I'd love to go to an escape room or bowling, an amusement park, noraebang. But actually, my ideal date, you guys might be able to guess because you know me well, it has to do with one of my favorite hobbies, League of Legends.
Of course.
So I would love to go to a PC방, order some spaghetti, and play as a duo together.
That is
great
beyond
idea.
Korean.
Yes. It's a really fun date, and it's also very cheap because it only costs a few dollars to go to a PC방, and you can spend hours for that price. The food is also delicious and very reasonable in terms of the price, and you're each on separate computers, so you pay for everything on your own computer, which means you don't have to have that sort of awkward who is going to pay for this first date conversation, which leads us into the rest of our topic for today.
All right. I think it's really interesting that you guys both gave a very different snapshot of what you define as a perfect date. Yeah, we always enjoy diverse opinions. But as Won-bin mentioned, dessert and also Brooke, PC방, 노래방, and all those activities, going out on a date often comes with expenses, whether it's dinner at a fancy restaurant or doing something together, such as going to the movies or going to the PC방. And to be honest, figuring out who pays for what can sometimes be a delicate or even an awkward conversation. So that's why many young people, couples in Korea, are now turning to a new solution, which is something called a date bank account. So Won-bin, for our viewers who are not familiar with this concept, what exactly is this? And the most important question, how does it work?
So this concept of having a joint bank account between people actually has been around for a while in Korea. Even most of our parents' generation have an experience with something called 개통장, which is basically a joint bank account, or 계모임, which is the group that owns the joint account, often with the goal of going on a trip together with a group of friends or your besties. And in 2025, this concept is being used by couples in order to ensure that both individuals are contributing equally to their relationship. To get a better grip of how many people are using this joint bank accounts, let's take a look at the data. So 5.9% of age group under 20s are using a joint bank account, which I'm surprised about. They're starting very early. And 20s with the highest proportion at 58%, 27% for 30s, 6.8% for 40s, then 2% for 50s, and surprisingly, 0.3% for people over 60s, which I'm very surprised about. And as you can see, the majority of the couples in their 20s are using a dating account. So the basic rule is that every month or week, each individual would deposit a certain amount that they somewhat negotiated in advance. And another thing to note is that the proportion of the contribution is different for each couple. It's not always 50-50. Depending on their financial situation, it usually varies or ranges anywhere from 50-50 to up to 80-20 in the extreme.
Right, so we've just taken a look at how this joint date bank account works and what this is. Now, I want to also mention that the idea of sharing an account for date expenses is something new, although it has been around for a past couple of years, but that didn't exist in previous generations, for example, our parents and our grandparents. So what do you think has sparked this new trend among young people?
There's definitely a few factors that plays a role to this change. First is the development of the technology, and then there's also the change in society. So first of all, thanks to the technologies, managing bank accounts has become much more convenient thanks to our bank apps on our phones. It's much easier to check the account balance and track what you spend, like the expenses, because you can easily see the record.
Right.
And secondly, and mainly compared to the past, everyone works and now has an income regardless of gender. So this means that it is naturally fair for everyone to financially contribute to a committed relationship, again, regardless of gender.
Right, because in the past here in Korea, it was mostly men who worked and women did not. But nowadays, we're seeing this career change, which has led to more young couples creating this joint date bank account. It's really hard. Yeah, it is indeed a tongue twister. Then, Brooke, are there any other reasons that you found interesting?
Well, yes, in addition to the reasons that Wonbin mentioned, I think there's been a cultural shift. Young Korean couples are now embracing the idea of financial fairness when it comes to their relationships, which leads to trends like what we're talking about today, the joint date bank accounts. I have to be very careful when I say that. And the panpan kyoron, or half and half marriage trend, which I'll get into later. But with the rising living costs and inflation, money has become kind of a sensitive topic. So a lot of times it's just more convenient and easier for couples to put their money into account, and then they can easily take from it when they want to go on a date. It's also something that sort of symbolizes trust and commitment leading up to marriage. Now, getting into panpan marriage, that is half and half marriage, you can probably guess what it means based on the name. You go 50-50 on everything, from wedding costs to housing expenses to daily living costs. Everyone splits it, and it's supposed to promote this idea of financial fairness. Sounds great on paper, right?
But in reality.
Right. It does alleviate that stress and burden for one partner, but at the same time, there are things like income disparity that can cause potential conflicts. It might not be as easy for one partner to put in the same amount as the other. And so this can lead to problems. There's also the issue of privacy. You might not have as much privacy in your personal spending if you decide to go completely 50-50. But overall, I think what we're seeing in Korea is that it's very important for them to have financial autonomy in their relationships. And that's why we're seeing these trends pop up.
And picking up on what Brooke mentioned, like everything in life, every idea has its upsides and downsides. So I also want to ask you, what do you think are the biggest pros and cons when it comes to opening this joint date bank account?
Almost, we got it. Well, let's start with the positives. So a study by Cornell University found that couples who share their finances actually tend to have a stronger connection, higher relationship satisfaction, and they have interactions that are more positive, stable, and safe than their counterparts that keep their finances separate. I think that's because pooling your financial resources, it feels like there is a sense of unity and shared purpose between you. You're working together towards a common financial goal. And so the study found that this really strengthens the bond of couples, and they can last even longer than couples that do not take this step together. Of course, there are potential risks to doing this. For example, in the event of a breakup, which no one wants, it's a very sad thing to talk about on Valentine's Day, but you have to think about it. If you break up, that means that now you have to untangle these financial assets, and that process can be very complex and also emotionally draining. I think that's why in America, typically people do not get a joint bank account until they are married. So watching the CG earlier, seeing that people in their teens like under 20s are actually doing this was really wild for me to see. It's a very different culture here in that respect. But the most important thing, I think, if you're going to do this with your partner is communication. We said earlier, communication is the key. You want to have a really transparent, trusting dynamic in order for this to work. But at the end of the day, some of the cons that come with it are that it sounds kind of legal, clinical, and transactional, right? When you're focused so much on money in a romantic relationship, it can kind of spoil things. So I'll let Won-bin elaborate more about what he thinks are the pros and cons of merging your financial resources.
Okay, so Brooke mostly highlighted the pros of these accounts. So Won-bin, could you focus more on the cons, possibly?
Absolutely. So building on top of what Brooke said, the more calculative you are, the less romantic you become. Some people say that it's because like people are selfish, or like if you talk about it like thoroughly in advance, like it's not a problem, but realistically, it's inevitable. Like somewhat, it's going to become less romantic. And when you take out the romance out of a couple's relationship, that's friendship, right? Or it can even be less than a friendship. Yeah, it's just a pile of responsibilities. And it can cause different conflicts and misunderstandings as well if the terms and conditions are not precisely communicated in advance. For example, some people will use it in a situation where they're actually not on dates and they're going to have an argument about that, or they are thinking that maybe they're abusing the account too much. There are many risks and problems. And some people who lean towards the traditional perspective believe that joint bank accounts just fundamentally goes against the belief and the sole purpose of dating and love. So there are a lot of downsides to it.
Right. So there are indeed a lot of pros and cons. So we're now going to get our panelists' thoughts. We're going to dig deep into this topic a bit more. So we are back with our O and X session. So please raise the O or X sign depending on what you think of each statement. So we're going to start with our first statement. Number 1, I've used a date bank account before, or I'm open to using one. What do you think? 1, 2, 3. X and Brooke in the middle. So we're going to start with Won-bin.
So for me, first of all, I've never used a dating account, and I've never planned on opening one. And this is because I just never felt like the necessity to do it. Like, excuse me, when I go on dates or when I spend money with my girlfriends, it's not a big problem. Like, we never had any conflicts about who's spending more money. Like, if I'm working and if the other person is not, I don't mind like spending a few more dollars. And if the other person got a bonus or if they made more money than me, then they would buy me something or they would just spend more money. So I guess my previous relationships were pretty lenient. So I never had an experience with it. And so far, I've never felt the necessity of opening one. So X.
Okay, so X. Then why did you choose in the middle, Brooke?
Well, I am American, and like I said earlier, it's pretty rare for us to get a joint bank account unless we're married. So to me, it feels like such a big step, and you're giving so much trust to another person. I'm also quite private generally, and I would be afraid that someone might micromanage my personal spending. So for that reason, I'm hesitant, but if my partner really thought it was a good idea and we had a very trusting relationship and communicated about it, I would be open to it.
All right, so we're now going to take a step further and take a look at our second statement. Number 2, both partners should contribute equally to the account, paying the exact same amount. What do you think? 1, 2, 3. So X and X. So we're going to start with you, Brooke.
I mentioned earlier the income disparity problem, because that makes it unfair. For example, if you and I were roommates, right, and you made $5,000 a month and I made $1,000 a month, rent is $2,000. So if we split it 50-50 down the middle, I have $0 left to do anything, and you would have $4,000. So in a relationship setting, it makes it so that the power dynamic is off. One person has so much money left over, and that means I have to depend on them completely for any of my personal spending if I'm spending all of my money on the bills. So I hope that example kind of shows why it might be better to have some sort of ratio relevant to each person's income.
Proportionate to what you're earning. Okay, then why did you choose X, Won-bin?
Well, I think Brooke just gave us like a really good outline of the objective reasons. I just want to add some of my personal opinions to it. And it's a bit of a TMI, but when I'm in a relationship or when I go on dates, I like to be a gentleman. I like to be a gentleman, so that means I don't mind paying a few more dollars when we're paying for something, and I don't mind grabbing the bills a few more times. And I kind of see it as like a way of me expressing my commitment and my contribution to the relationship.
Very sweet.
So yeah, it doesn't really have to be like, oh, like I'm measuring this person is spending this much, and I spent this much. She bought the lunch, so I'll buy coffee, and then she'll get the cake later.
Calculated, right?
It's not really a problem for me. So I don't think partners should be paying the same amount or contributing the same amount financially. It all depends on their situations.
I can just sense that a lot of our viewers, their hearts are being stolen by Wonbi right now. I think you'll get a lot of
Happy Valentine's Day.
All right, our last statement of the day. Number 3, if I break up with someone I shared an account with, I'd be reaching out to split the remaining balance. This is a really tricky question, but let's hear from our panelists. 1, 2, 3. O and O. Back to you, Wonbi. Please take O.
As harsh and cold this sounds, like if the tragedy happens, right? Like if it does end, like I think it's better to get the financial conflicts out of the way
ASAP.
As soon as possible, ASAP. It's like fresh fruits, like they rot very quickly. So if you delay it, and if you wait for a few weeks or a few months, like it'll be even worse.
Yeah, it's gonna make things
because
worse.
it's like, let's say you've broken up and like 2 months later you gotta go like, hey,
by the way,
the bank account, like it's better. As much as it would be painful, it's better to get rid of it, resolve the situation as soon as possible. Yes, I would.
Can you relate to this, Brooke?
Totally agree. I think you have to rip it off like a Band-Aid. It's super awkward, but you have to do it. I think also it can make it easier if you have that conversation ahead of time. It doesn't sound romantic, but it's kind of like a prenuptial agreement when you get married. When you get a joint bank account together, you are agreeing to get a very serious financial asset together. Right. So I think you should discuss at that time what happens if we break up. It's not romantic to talk about, but if you have a plan set in place ahead of time, perhaps it won't be so awkward in the end. But we hope that none of that actually comes to pass. No breakups on this Valentine's Day. Only love.
All right, so we had some very candid and fruitful discussion here in the studio. We're now going to expand our discussion. We also asked our viewers for their thoughts on joint date accounts. Let's take a look at the results. So we conducted a survey through our Arirang News YouTube channel from February 6th to 12th. The question was, what's your view on a joint bank account for dating expenses? As you can see on the screen, out of 175 votes, 54% answered that they're practical and beneficial. 46% answered they're too cold and tight-fisted. So more than half of our viewers are indeed for these joint bank accounts. So after the break, we'll be joined by a young person from Spain to hear his opinion on this trend. We'll be right back.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
So joining us on this Valentine's Day is Gabriel Ruiz Benito, a Gen Z from Spain. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Great. So, Gabriel, we first want to ask you, in Spain, how do couples typically handle dating expenses? So do people tend to split the cost, or does one side usually cover more?
Well, actually, if I have to answer that with one word, it would be we do split the bill, like way more than America or even way more than Korea. I feel like Spain is very 50-50 based, but it also depends. We are 50-50 based when we are younger, like in university or in high school or in middle school. And it comes from the fact that you are not earning your own money. So that does not make sense that one of the two pays more, because it's not you paying, it's your father paying for you. So we have that feeling of like, I mean, it's not even like between us, it's between our parents. So I pay 50%, you pay 50%, and that's it. And once you start working, there is a saying in Spanish that says like, donde haya currante que no pague estudiante. That means when there is a person that is working, a person who is not working yet should not pay. It also comes from the same way of thinking, like I am working and I have income, and if the person that is in front of me has not income at all, it will not be good to put that financial burden on the parents of the other person. So that's why normally the person who has income pays. And then once you like are in a committed relationship and both of you are working, that's like more tricky because sometimes the woman asks the man to pay a little bit more. And I think it's completely illogical because the salaries break is like real, and at least men tend to earn more money. But also, it's not only about women and men, but the person that earns more money normally puts a little bit more.
Oh, I see. So do young couples in Spain have something similar to a joint bank accounts like for dating in Korea, or is it just unique just for Korea?
Actually, it's not that popular in Spain. There is people that have it for sure, but it's not that popular at all. Because in Spain, we don't split the bill 50-50. It's even worse than that. When you go out and you have lunch with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you pay whatever you order for, and she pays whatever she ordered for. So it's not like even 50-50, and they're like, it's just like there is no way to cross it. Like, you just pay what you order.
Really, really fun answers. Thank you. One last question for you. In your opinion, what's the best way for couples to manage dating expenses fairly, and what do you think about such joint bank accounts?
I think it's like a really good thing. For example, my parents, I am the 6th of 8 brothers and sisters, and my parents never had anything but a joint bank account. I know that they don't even care about how much each of them earns. They just have everything in the name of the two of them, and then do share all the money. And whenever they want to buy something, they always ask each other for permission. And I think that is how a relationship should go on, because it's not I earn more, you earn more. We are a family, we are a community, and if you feel like you want to be for all your life with your couple, I feel it's a good way to purchase. So yes, I'm completely into joint bank accounts, but only when the relationship gets serious enough. Because if not, I feel like it could be a point of discussion. But if it's a committed relationship and they are married or dating in thinking about marriage, I feel like having separate accounts and separate financials could be a point of discussion, and also means a little bit of lack of trust.
All right, Gabriel, thank you so much for your time today, and hope you have a great Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah, I will have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so after today's discussion, have your thoughts on the joint date bank account. I finally got it right.
Yeah.
Yay.
Did the thoughts change? Did your thoughts change?
Well, if both partners agree, it's not a problem. Therefore, if my girlfriend asks me to open a joint account, I'll try to open it. Would I actively do it? I don't think so. That didn't change. But if it's done right, it can definitely bring great benefits. However, it's also a sharp double-edged sword, as we discussed the cons. And as a person who doesn't mind grabbing the bills a few more times, who doesn't mind contributing a little bit more, for me, I see it as an unnecessary responsibility rather than a tool.
But you're still open-minded to the suggestion.
I am open to it. I'll give it a try if I have a chance.
What do you think, Brooke?
Just to end with a very brief story, I had a friend who went on a few dates with a guy who offered to pay, but then he ended up breaking up with her because he said because she never offered to pay, he felt like she didn't care as much about the relationship. So I think just the act of offering to contribute can actually be very important to people. So I see the merits of the joint bank account. It basically says, hey, both of us are in this together and we want to both contribute financially to our relationship. So I would say after learning a little bit more about it today, I'm open to it, and I'd like to say I wish everyone has a very happy Valentine's Day.
Right. Hope you all have a happy Valentine's Day. And that's all for NewsGen this Friday and for this week, but we will be back next Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Iwon Bin.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And Brooke Prince.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching and staying with us throughout the week, and hope you join us next week as well. We are
New
Generation.
How to survive in Korea. Cafes. Step 1. Find a seat. Before ordering, find a seat. Laptop.